Hello, my wonderful viewers. It's a beautiful day today, and I would like to share a piece of knowledge with you. I'm happy to be here. I remain your favorite teacher, Don Benjamin Odiye, and today I want us to have a kind of discuss based on the previous topic that we have read from my book, Pain to Profit, on the subject of religion and God versus man. And as an African man, I'd like to talk about the experience that we have had and the origin of this religion in Africa. Basically, because of the effect of colonization, I now think to say that religion is politics, because looking at the betrayal of colonial invasion in Africa, the militarization and the academic preparation, I now understand that the colonialists and the imperialists built a system which they divided into three parts. First, it was the explorers and their expeditions. Next came the missionaries. And thirdly came the mercenaries and the merchants. These people were businessmen, you see. And that has made me to think a lot of times, what happened to our African ancestors? What happened to the true origin of the relationship that we have had with God, and how it was changed in our mind with some kind of brainwash ideas? And that is what has brought me to enlighten the people to wake up from their slumbers, to have this mind awakening, a certain kind of mind revolution, to free ourselves from the mental slavery and the brainwash ideas that we have been taught over the years, beginning from the time of the early days explorers. If I ask if our African ancestors has failed us, I don't know what anybody's answer will be, but my answer will be no. Because looking at colonial invasion, we will understand that these colonialists came and built a business system. It was a well orchestrated system. Now, I want to take you back to history time so that we will understand where all this misconception started from. Looking at the early days explorers like Mungo Park, who was a pioneer of the African expedition. He explored the River Niger through the areas of today Gambia, Senegal, Mali, and Nigeria. He was sent to Africa by the African Association in Britain, which was founded in the year 1788 in London. Now, the purpose of that association was for promoting the discovery of the interior part of Africa. It was the work of Mungo Park that gave way to many other explorers like the Landa brothers. Hugh Clapperton, David Livingstone, Henry Morton Stanley, and many more. And after all their explorations, we will now see that they did not really come to teach us about God. They came for business. These people were merchants and businessmen. Unfortunately, the work of Mungo Park, after he died, he couldn't finish his work. It was completed by the London brothers, Richard and John, who traced the Niger River to the Atlantic Ocean. Also, let's not forget about Henry Morton Stanley, who explored Central Africa and the Congo Basin. There was also Hugh Capleton, like I earlier said, who explored the West and the Central Africa. Bolton and Speke explored the eastern part of Africa, the Lake Tanganyika, the Nile source, and there's also the big imperialist, Cecil John Rhodes, who served as a prime minister of the Cape Colony, and from the year 1890 to the year 1896, he led the British territorial expansion northwards into areas called Rhodesia. It was named after him. Those areas in Africa is the modern day Zimbabwe and Zambia. He used his wealth and private army, and they tricked us with treaties to secure land for the British Empire. He was strongly believed to be someone that advocated for the British supremacy and imperial expansion. He also advocated for policies that denied the Africans of their lands and political rights. His ideas shaped the racial segregation and also gave way to the apartheid regime of Southern Africa. So you see, when these people came with their books and started writing what they saw and perhaps what they understood at that time, they tricked us to show them more of our rich natural resources, the gold mines, the diamond mines, precious stones, coal beds, the vegetations, iron ore, the fireproof asbestos, the ivories, and because of our innocence, we believed them, we showed them around. And after this, the next group came, which were the missionaries. You know, we African people, we are nice people originally. We are very hospitable. We are very welcoming. So when the missionaries came, we welcomed them. We believed them. And they began to teach us a lot of things. They taught us about their God and brainwashed us about the concept of love. They told us to forgive even if we are being enslaved or persecuted. They robbed us of our wealth and freedom. They stole our academic system, our language, and they told us to love our enemies and pray for them so that our reward will be in heaven. And that we should not worry about the things on the earth because in a little while we will be in heaven. They described heaven to us as a place in the cloud, and they told us that the clouds will open and Jesus will come from the sky and take us to heaven where there will be no more sorrows, no more pains, no more tears, no more sickness and disease, where we would live in peace and harmony with friends and family, and all our problems will be wiped away. They came and taught us to pray with our eyes closed. And by the time we said amen and opened our eyes, their guns and barrels started blasting us behind our back. All our rich mineral resources were gone. Our lands became their territories. And now they want us to be quiet and not speak about this, to forgive and forget those betrayals of the past. But how can we forget? Even if we forgive, how can we forget? They told us not to worry about who can kill the flesh but cannot kill the spirit. You see, while they were teaching us all these brainwashed ideas, by that time, the African people were already psychologically defeated. In my own opinion, this is so bad. I would call this man inhumanity to man. So, if I was asked, did our African ancestors fail us? I would say no. They did not fail us. They were ambushed. They were robbed. They faced the most calculated invasion in human history. It didn't just begin with the guns. It started with a nice greeting, a beautiful smile on the face, which was a false smile. So we would understand now that truly, like I said, the colonizers arrived in the African continent in these three phases: the explorers, the missionaries, the mercenaries, and the merchants. They came with a psychological warfare disguised as friendship and religion. You know, when we think about David Livingstone, who was a Scottish medical doctor, a missionary, and explorer, who came to Africa to teach us about the subject of God and religion, we should understand that he did not come alone. Of course, he came with his map, and they also came with guns. And these missionaries did not just preach love and religion. They prepared the mind of the African people for submission. And while the missionaries used the mercenaries used their guns and rifles to control the people, they told us that our kingdom is in heaven. But they were here measuring our land. And before we could ask questions, They have already started selling us away as slaves by way of business and commerce. The explorers mapped the lands of the African continent, the minerals. The missionaries mapped the mind of the people with a brainwash idea, you see, and the merchants, the businessmen, they mapped the market system, the trade system in Africa. I would say that it was a full spectrum of mental, spiritual, and material invasion. And up till today, we still have these imperialists operating in the continent of Africa. For example, maybe a lot of Africans do not know this. The Royal Niger Company, they came for the purpose of business. But in the beginning, they came as explorers and missionaries. The Royal Niger Company is what later changed to the United African Company, which is now called Unilever, which is a British colonialist company and is still operating in the African continent today, especially in the part of West Africa, notably in Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, under the name of Unilever. This company is a colonial era trading African raw materials like palm oil, cocoa, rubber, granules, and so on. This company supplied European manufactured goods to the African market. They operated so many shops, the warehouses, the shipping and river transportation. It was the most powerful European company in the colonial Africa. You see, this company which supported and benefited from the British colonial rules became a symbol of economic exploitation during the era of colonialism. Let's not forget also that Cecil John Rhodes became a diamond magnate. He founded the Bears Corporation, the Bears Group, which dominated the world diamond trade, and ever since has one of the biggest diamond mines, and is still mining those diamonds in South Africa up till today. We must not forget all this. So, if we think about all these things that the imperialists and the colonialists have done in the past, we will understand that truly our African ancestors did not fail us. They were not naive. They were actually outnumbered, outgunned, and betrayed by the false hope and illusion of hospitality. But I would love to say that the real failures will be our generation if, after seeing the blueprints of how the African continent was colonized, and we fail to reverse these brainwash ideas in our mind and thinking, we will never become who we are supposed to be. Our forefathers fought. They fought. They made a lot of sacrifice. They fought with what they had at that moment. They fought with courage, faith, and hope for the freedom and liberation and the independence of Africa. But our generation is very lucky. Now we have what our forefathers didn't have at their time. We have information, we have technologies, we have more civilized insights, and so on. So if we fail to realize and fall for this same trick twice, that is not the failures of our ancestors or those that have lived before us. It is our own deliberate failure. So we must have this mind awakening. We must understand that the concept of God is not in what they truly taught us, because we already have our own way. We must understand that God is in us, and we are representatives of God on this earth. But the most important thing is how we live our life every day. How do we relate with our people? Who are we and how do we live? That is what defines us. Now, we should think also that after the betrayals of the colonial system, we Africans, we started to wake up. We started to fight for liberation. We started to fight for independence. Then the imperialists and the colonialists, they came with another system, a replica of their initial colonizing ideas and politics. And this also affected us because we did not realize, we did not know that this is a new system that they have brought to us. They started using our own people to fight against us. And that is why I ask, who taught us to hate ourselves? Who taught us to hate ourselves? Today, you see Africans killing Africans. Let's think about the founding fathers of African independence. Most of them were all assassinated by their own people, but this was orchestrated by the colonizers, which they do not want to let us have that liberation, because they have seen the rich natural resources that is in Africa. So they refuse to let us have that freedom. And when anybody comes up to speak about the liberation of the African continent, they would find every possible means to keep that person shut, to keep them quiet, or better still, to assassinate them. All these are the brainwash ideas that they have taught us, and now we cannot even recognize the true concept of our religion, of our God, and the relationship with God. In Africa now, you have millions and millions of churches everywhere with different names. You have so many religions everywhere. These are the effects of colonialism. So I would say that the misconception that we have had over the years, which we are still having today, is as a result of this brainwash idea that was brought to us by the colonizers. Let's not forget the assassination of Patrice Emery Lumumba of the Democratic Republic of Congo. He was the first Prime Minister of Congo. But because he spoke about the tyranny of their colonizers, he was assassinated by his own comrade, his own friend, which was like he was like a surrogate leader of the colonizers. He was assassinated by the strongman Mobutu Sese Seko Kukwabendo Ozaumbanga. Let's not forget the tyranny and the misconduct of Mobutu. Mobutu at one time was said to be richer than his country, the Democratic Republic of Congo. At that time, he changed the name to Zaire. He was just a leader who was actually a tool for the colonizers. He ran a kind of kleptocratic regime, and we must not forget how that has affected that country in Africa. And up till this moment, the Democratic Republic of Congo has never remained the same. It is one of the poorest countries in Africa, but it has so much rich natural resources that if it was well managed, it will be one of the richest countries in the world. And there are many, many more African leaders that we are used in the modern day against Africa. And that is what is keeping us from proper development. Let's not forget also the self-acclaimed Emperor Jean Bedel Bokassa of the Central African Republic, who in April in the year 1979 massacred over 100 school children for protesting against the decree made by his government to buy school uniform from the company owned by his wife. You see, he lived a very lavish life. Why the country was in abject poverty. These leaders only exploited the people and destroyed their country. There are many more of them like this. They also have another system where the African leaders would want to stay in power for so long, and many of them even call themselves presidents for life. A very good example of one of these African leaders that have been in power for so long is Yoweri Kaguta Museveni in Uganda. He has been in power for over 20 something years and he's still there today. I cannot understand why these African leaders are so power drunk that they do not even care about their people. We have had some African leaders that have been outspoken. Men like Robert Gabriel Mugabe, who has spoken so much that the colonizers decided to brand him a dictator. When there is any African leader that speaks about the misdeeds of the colonizers, they like to brand them dictators or give them a bad image. We had so many of them like this. So many African leaders that wanted the progress of the African continent, but they were all toppled by coup d'etats. Now also, let's not forget Nelson Mandela, who was jailed for 27 years by the apartheid regime of South Africa. What about men like Chris Hani, Stephen Biko? These men were assassinated because they spoke out. What about men like Thomas Isildo Noel Sankara that was assassinated by his own best friend Blaise Compaoré, who was a tool for the colonizers, because Thomas Sankara was the first president of Burkina Faso and he wanted the best for his country. He wanted development. He did a lot to promote the development of his country, Burkina Faso. But unfortunately, his life was cut short. And the colonizers, they supported Blaise Compaoré to be in power for over 20 years. I cannot imagine how these things happen. This cannot happen in some other parts of Europe and America. Things like this do not happen. Although we know that in some other countries in Latin America, there have been coup, there have been political unrest in places like Panama, Nicaragua, in Peru, in Brazil. Things like this has happened in the past. But I want to focus on the African continent. I want a kind of awakening for the African people. We must realize that these people are using us to destroy ourselves. So we must free ourselves from this mental slavery. Let's not forget. We must remember also men like Mohammed Ahmed Bembela, the first president of independent Algeria. We must remember men like Sylvanus Olympio, who was assassinated. He was the first president of Togo. We must remember men like Madibu Keita of Mali. We must remember men like Mzee Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya. We must remember men like Walimu Julius Kamarade Nyerere of Tanzania. These men fought for the liberation of Africa. These are Pan-Africanists. They wanted the best for us in Africa. We should also remember men like Samora Moïse Marcel, who, out of conspiracy theory, we believe that he was assassinated in a plane crash. We must remember men like Amilcar Cabral of Guinea-Bissau. We must not also forget men like Kenneth David Kaunda, the first president of Zambia, who played a key role in supporting the liberation movement in countries like South Africa, Zambia, and Namibia. We must not also forget the struggles of His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia, who played a key role in founding the Organization of African Unity. And in the year 1936, he addressed the League of Nations when the fascist dictator Idoche Benito Mussolini made an aggression in Ethiopia. He spoke about this, pointing out the dangers of fascism and the importance of united security. We must not forget all this. In Africa, Selassie founded the Organization of African Unity with the help of other African leaders in the year 1963. And the purpose was for promoting the African unity and independence. Unfortunately, in the year 1974, Emperor Selassie was deposed by a Marxist military junta called the Derg regime, led by Mengistu Haile Mariam. And they say it is amidst the economic crisis, the hardship and unrest in the nation of Ethiopia. And later, in the year 1975, it is widely believed that Emperor Haile Selassie was assassinated on the orders of the leader of the Derg regime, Mengistu Haile Mariam. We must not forget also the Osagyefo, Dr. Francis Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana, who fought. He fought and made a lot of sacrifice for his country and the African continent in general. He spoke about the importance of the African unity, the liberation, the importance of coming together to form one nation in Africa. We should also remember the experience of Ahmed Sékou Touré, the first president of Guinea, who was a major figure in African anti-colonial and Pan-African history. When their colonizers, the French government, gave them an option if they want to continue to relate with the government or if they want to be totally independent. He chose to be free. He chose to be independent. He wanted his nation to be totally independent. And what did they do? The colonizers tried to subject that country to abject poverty. They destroyed everything that they have initially done in that country, even if it was being done by the resources of the country. But Ahmed Sekou Toure has a famous quote. He said, "We prefer freedom in poverty to riches in slavery." We must not forget the struggles of all these people. We must remember also Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, who led Nigeria to independence. He was the first prime minister of fully sovereign Nigeria. We must not forget these people. We must not forget their struggles. We must also remember men like Sir Amadu Bello, the Saldana of Sokoto, and the Premier of northern Nigeria. All these men fought for the liberation of Africa. And also, we must remember Dr. Benjamin Nnamdi Azikiwe, who was popularly called Zik of Africa. He was the first president of independent Nigeria, and he played a central role in the Nigerian struggle for independence and the formation of a modern unified Nigerian states. We must not forget the struggles of these men. These men are widely remembered as the founding fathers of African independence, and they are major figures in the continent's anti-colonial struggles. So you would see that over the years, there have been this kind of political struggles which did not just start all of a sudden. It started from somewhere. It started from the early days explorers and the missionaries. And now, the strongest weapon that they are using against the African continent is the subject of religion. We must liberate our minds. We must understand that the concept of God is not based on anybody's ideas. We must understand that we can now have this personal relationship with God. Yes, we must pray, we must have faith, we must believe, but the most important thing is how we live our life. We must live our life so peaceful. We must learn to live in harmony with everybody we come in contact with. That is what defines us. That is what defines our religion. We must learn to share this love, because that is what shows who we truly are. And if anybody wants to speak about us, they will speak about us from what they know that we have done and the way we have lived our life. I used to say that we should be careful how we live our life, because our life definitely will be the next Bible or the next religious book that people will read about. That is the story of our lives. So I would like to encourage all of you to think about all these things that have happened and then come to a self-realization on this subject of religion. And I believe that this can help us to liberate our minds from mental slavery so that we can eventually become a better version of ourselves. That is why I have taken my time to share this piece of knowledge. I want you all to sit back and ponder about this. I'm just trying to make common sense. It is a mind awakening. We should learn from all this. So, my wonderful viewers, I thank you for staying true. I thank you for your time. And I want to encourage you to subscribe to this channel, to like and comment. I would like to hear your own opinion. We should know that this is purely for educational purpose and it's not personal. It's just for educational purpose. So I want to encourage you to stay true, and we will talk more about other subjects, and in the next video we will go on to continue our reading and study from my book called Pain to Profit. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next video. God bless you.